Hello and welcome back to another PS5 test, and today we are revisiting the subject of the Seagate Firecuda 530. Now this is the 1TB model. Our previous tests have been with the 500 gig model, so I wanted to give us a brand new format here on the PS5. We're going to be bench testing 4 games in this video. We've got another part coming up soon, and overall the reason I kind of wanted to revisit this SSD is the first time around I was looking at the 500 gig when stock levels were low and prices were ridiculously high, but now as things have evened out and availability has improved, this SSD, which I still personally think is overall, when you look at durability, performance, heatsink and everything, I still think this is the best SSD on the market right now for PS5. I wanted to revisit it with some of the more modern games we've been looking at, as well as compare it against the other SSDs in the big face-off videos very soon. But for now, let's format this SSD. This is the heatsink equipped version of the 1TB version of this drive. And straight away off the bat, a very impressive benchmark there. Lovely and high there for us to be playing on with. Again, this is pretty much the height of the way things are right now, with this SSD ranking in at a lovely 6,500 megabytes per second there on screen. So lovely stuff. So let's go ahead straight in and get into our PS5. You can hear the fan there in the background. That isn't the fan. That is the disk inside this PS5 for one of the games that we're going to be utilising. Don't worry, all the data is going to be moved over to the SSD away from the internal PS5 SSD. I'm not going to make you guys wait around too much for that. We're going to head straight into the settings menu there, go into our storage area. We can see there straight away, there is our Seagate Firecuda there on screen. We've also got a few updates there at the top of the screen. They're all going to get moved over as well. But for now, there you can see our Firecuda 1TB visual on screen. So we're going to go ahead into the games and move over a big old pile of games for this and the test that's going to follow. So again, these games are going to be on screen. So let's select the items to move. Going to be moving Lego Worlds, Deathloop, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Miles Morales, Last of Us Part 2, Rocket League, Ghosts of Tsushima, and Marvel Spider-Man Remastered. Those are all of the games. We're only going to be testing 4 of them today, but we're going to be testing 4 of the games in today's video and 4 of the games in the next video. So let's move that transfer over. Again, as in previous videos, and I know I've covered this before, so I'm really sorry if you've watched the other Firecuda video, but just in case you haven't, the migrating of data over to the PS5 from the PS5 internal SSD over to any M.2 SSD inside, it's not really a relatable and followable sequential write. Sequential meaning big data. The result is, because some kind of encryption or compression happening inside the PS5, moving data over from the internal SSD over to an M.2 SSD upgrade is slower than you might expect. Not to do with the SSD, not to do with the internal SSD, but certainly to do with that internal kind of compression or maybe an anti-piracy measure. So we're not going to be trying to measure how long this takes, because we tested this on more than 20 different SSDs, and the time to migrate the same 435 gigabytes of data never changes. So for now, let's fast forward to all of these games we moved over. We'll do a quick show just to let you know the games that are all on the M2, and then we'll start with our first game, which is Spider-Man Miles Morales. Let's fast forward. Okay, so the transfer has completed. If we make our way back onto the M2, we can see all of those lovely games have all been transferred over to the M2 drive there. And again, we're going to make our way into our first game, which is Spider-Man Miles Morales right there. So let's come out, go right back into the main menu and go ahead and play the game. Again, I'm not going to include any of the opening logos. They can't be skipped, unfortunately. And let's be realistic, the effort that goes into loading a developer's logo doesn't take anywhere near the time that it's kept on screen. It's a simple FMV, so we're not going to include any of this in comparing the performance and the loading time of the Seagate Firecuda 1TB here. What we're going to do is make our way onto the title screen, and then from there load into the world. Remember, what we're looking at here is how quickly it loads us into the world, and as we make our way through the world, do we see any drops in frame rate, how our assets introduced in the background, and when I'm jumping around from the highest point to the lowest point, does the game swap the textures out as quickly as we'd like to see. So let's make our way in. We've got our safe spot all lined up. So let's go in 3, 2, 1. Should be a lovely quick transfer there. We're going to do a couple of different kinds of tests here on this game. So we're already in there. Again, you are looking at both the internal PS5 SSD performance alongside that of the Seagate Firecuda there. I can only see the Firecuda during this, but I've done these tests enough to know when there are weaknesses being shown. So the first thing I want to do is get as high as possible. What I'm asking you guys to do is to not look too much at the center of the screen. You want to look at the edges of the screen. You want to make sure that the game is loading in all those assets. It spends way too much time focusing on the middle there, and it's so easy to miss if the game isn't loading it right. I mean, now I'm seeing no difference there in terms of frame rate. I'm going to try and go to the highest building there in the distance, and then from there, what we can do is see how well the game swaps out those textures between the low, medium, and high quality to kind of save resources there in the background. Unlike the previous Spider-Man game, this game does a much better job of capitalizing on the hardware inside. So once we run up this area, we can see here how things are being swapped out, if at all. But again, we're seeing absolute speed there, no change there in the beginning. So what we can do is just very quickly jump off the edge of this building and force the game into introducing those textures as quickly as possible. But no problems there at all from what I'm seeing. Lighting effects are still good. Again, we're using the high quality graphics mode here because increased frame rate isn't going to be that useful for testing the SSD. That would be much better for looking at the CPU, GPU. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to a fast travel on this game so we can see just how quickly it loads us in to another area of the map. So here we are on the north area of the map. Let's move down as low as possible. Head down here, nice far end of the map here. Let's go to a stop here. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. Again, should be lovely and quick. We want to come out of the jump straight away out there. So we want to move this as quickly as possible. Rapidly tap jump a little bit too much there, because what we want is to get as fast as possible here, just in case the game is still loading in any assets. Now, let's be realistic. This game does take advantage of a lot of reused assets in a lot of its background graphic stuff, because a lot of the city is going to be the same. So a lot of the base level assets aren't going to change, but otherwise we should see other stuff introduced as we move into other areas. It still seems to be running fine. Seeing no problems, no drops, nothing. Everything's running fine there. So I think for now, I think we can stop with this game and move on to our next test game, which is of course Lego Worlds. Okay, so we're on the title screen of Lego Worlds. For those that aren't aware, and I've mentioned it in other videos, this is kind of a combination of No Man's Sky meets Minecraft. A hugely overlooked title in my opinion, but there you go. The reason we include this game is simply because it is a great test of IOPS. It was like when we were testing Subnautica in previous videos. It's a game that has a lot of kind of non-sequential data. It kind of rears, these sort of games rear their head a lot more on PC, where this sort of thing can be tracked a lot easier. So you're going to have to sort of take my word for it on this about they're front loaded with all the sequential, the big data, and then after that you have to follow up of all the little tiny blibs and blab database data there. And this is where a drive that presumably with a high IOPS rating will really shine on a game like this. It's a single test on this. We're going to create a custom world. This custom world that we create in the game, again, is nice and straightforward. It's going to be the normal kind of open sandbox mode there. It's going to be offline, so there'll be no limitations. We create it from scratch every time. We go for the largest possible surface area of 200 times 200, and we make sure to include every single biome that the world has to offer, because that means it forces the game to have to kind of randomize which elements it's going to introduce, not only in the initial loading, but also when you're going into the world. And what we're going to do is load into this world that we're creating, and then from there, we're just going to go around the plane, or the field of play, and just double check that the texture swaps are okay, and also the speed at which the world loads in. So let's go in 3, 2, 1. Now, the loading for this game is a little long. Even on PS5, it's quicker than it was on PS4. And as you can see, you've got the early sequential getting chucked in before the game does a kind of semi-background load as we're moving into the planet area. And again, it's half loading, I would say, as we go into it here, and it's loading in all that backward stuff there. So we can make our way in. There's percentages as we move into the world. I felt like the second half of that transition was a lot snappier than the first, certainly when compared to other SSDs. So let's make our way into the world at large. And we'll make our way in. And the first thing we're going to do is land on the ground and get ourselves some form of air travel. So again, kind of a misty plane we've moved into here, but we're not here to review this title, are we? We want to jump out and go straight in, bring out the discoveries there, get ourselves an air vehicle so we can go ahead and explore the general area. So let's go in and jump straight in. And what we'll do is start moving around the area of play. And we'll even bring the camera in nice and close so we can double check that the textures are working. We can sort of look around, see how those textures are doing. Seemingly okay. And again, if we bring the camera nice and far out there, again, this isn't an ideal kind of, this misty fog area is a bit annoying for these tests because it's going to make checking those textures a bit harder. But as we move forward out of this region, we should have a little change there as we move all the way through the worlds. But again, this is one of those games where draw distance is a little harder to track for numerous reasons. Let's go ahead and carry on out into a larger area of play as we move through the map. And again, seemingly running okay there, but again, that mist is kind of making things a little difficult to see for us there. But as we move into a much closer degreed area there, it should be a lot easier to track. The world seems to be loading in fine. Again, they've got these weird lit areas that we're in right now. I think for now what we can do, there's no drop in frame rate from what I can see. Something this game is already quite guilty of a lot of the time. Go ahead and move out of it there. And I think what we should do is just very quickly introduce some land masses for us here. So let's bring that camera back out. Let's introduce a building so we can double check that the game's going to be okay to introduce that kind of stuff. Let's go ahead and create something quite large. Let's scroll on down. Let's get a nice large structure for us there. Let's go for something large real quick. Let's go for that. Some sort of weird Ninjago city. So let's place that item there. It's going to start creating our new structure nice and quick. Just decided to build it around a vehicle for some reason. So again, it's going to load that in for us there. Again, we can chuck another one down. Let's not give this SSD any time to relax, shall we? Go ahead and get it to start filtering all the stuff we've created. And again, while that's being done, it doesn't stop us interacting with this area. Let's go in for a nice close camera. Double check everything's been built okay. And yeah, seemingly fine. The low to medium textures have been swapped out all nice and quickly for these nice high quality ones. Generally, this is a kind of game, it looks like it hasn't finished building this area quite yet, but again, unsurprising. But again, lovely stuff there. The textures and the lighting is what I would expect it to be, with everything running quite quickly. Running quite well. We can come out, have a little look, and again, quite happy with what we're seeing here and the speed at which it's been designed. So I think it's now let's make our way onto our third test game, which is Deathloop. Okay, so in Deathloop, once again, we're not going to count any of these loading areas here. It's just impossible to track them, really. And they're all developers' logos that have got nothing to do with the speed of the SSD there. So as we make our way into this title, it's worth bearing in mind we're going to do a single world load test here. And we're looking at effectively the load time of how quickly it gets us into the world, as well as how the game handles frames per second. Does it maintain that solid 60? And the textures as we move around when we have a lot of close-up stuff, how well it handles the swap out of those textures. Something that's been very common in a lot of arcane titles. But for now, let's load in. And again, we are only going to count when the loading appears. We're not looking at the opening transition graphic there, because it does differ every time you play. So it makes it unfair to include it. So just the loading in for now in 3, 2, 1. So there we go, loading in from that title there where we've got the figure 8, everything loading in. So we're going to move in lovely and fast into this world. And what we want to do, once again, is test how quickly it loads in this game. The change of the textures, does it maintain that frame rate? Everything that we want to see as we move around the game as quickly as possible. So again, moving nice and fast, giving the game no chance to slow down. Again, if we die, it doesn't really matter, because if we die, all we're going to do is revert back to the early stages of the game. So again, we can go ahead and just keep checking out the transition between those textures as we move in and out. Again, moving nice and fast. Again, textures on the game running lovely and smoothly there. Let's create a bit of noise. Get some of these enemies coming towards us so we can bench test that texture swap there. So again, we're seeing fine. Then we've got those kind of glory kills there running fine. I'm going to be dead at any second. And it's going to just very quickly fast forward us back. And then what we can do is carry on making our way forward nice and quick. But yeah, I'm seeing no drops, nothing I'd be concerned with if I was running a game from this. This is a PS5 title. It does take advantage of a lot of the performance there, of the NVMe's inside. Doesn't seem overwhelmingly impressive if you weigh it up for just an FPS shooter, but it's the vibrance of the graphics and also maintaining that frame rate when there's lots going on screen that's really, really important. So once again, we're moving around the map, still not seeing any slowdown to be concerned with. Carrying on, again, I'm quite close to the microphone with the controller. I apologise for the vibration there. So let's carry on, nice and quick. Pretty sure that door's not even open yet. No, it's not. So we can carry on moving around. Got ourselves a camera there to be annoying. Can carry and move forward, but for now, yep, I'd say that's pretty impressive. I'm happy with what I've seen here. I think we should make our way on to our last game there. I'm just going to jump off and why not just see what happens when we jump down here. But for now, we're going to our next game, which is Call of Duty Warzone. Okay, so in Call of Duty Warzone, it's worth highlighting that testing the performance of this game, because I know it's an enormously popular title, is incredibly difficult when it comes to seeing how well the game's going to run on your NVMe SSD. Largely because you cannot disable internet connectivity on this game. There's no option whatsoever. Again, if we try to go through this, and again we're looking at Call of Duty Warzone here, it becomes increasingly difficult to remove any kind of online connectivity and how that impacts when you are playing on, when you're trying to measure the SSD, how much of the delays or any drops in latency or elongated load times are the result of online server connections and not the result of the SSD. Now, if you try to play it without internet connectivity, not only will it spit you out and say that you can't proceed, but to make matters worse, pretty much all of the features are disabled. So what we're going with is an online connected game, but we're using an offline training mode that only uses bots. Unfortunately, that still requires a limited internet connection, but still nonetheless, that's the best we're going to get on bench testing this game. Okay, so we're here on the desktop. We've again had to enable the internet connectivity, but we're going to go straight into that Battle Royale practice mode with bots. So again, as much as we're going to try to compare the performance of the Firecuda 530 versus the internal PS5 SSD, there is wiggle there, definitely in the middle during internet and server-based connectivity. And let's go in straight now. And again, this is a game, we're not really looking at the loading screen. We're looking more at how the game plays. So for now, let's go in 3, 2, 1. So again, it goes straight into a black screen, which goes then into a load screen. From the load screen, it will go into a pre-rendered few second long FMV, and then uses in-game assets briefly, very briefly, for the inside of the craft, and then goes into full world in-game assets there. So that's an FMV, absolutely no difference there. If you're a PC player that plays with the settings, you'll know that. But here is in-game assets, and again, they do scale up or down for PC players based on their settings. So clearly they are using the in-game engine there. So now we're going to make our way in for the load into the world. Now look around the edges of the world. Forgive me for the cough there. As you can see, The edges of the world is where you start to see a little pop in because of some of those trees there. Again, what we're looking at here is how quickly the game is going to load into the on-ground high-res assets as we jump down. We're not going to worry too much about killing people or weapons. Our predominant goal here is to get on the work ground, get a vehicle and drive around as fast as we can to force the game to load in some of those assets. So for now, let's jump down. I know where there's a vehicle going begging. Let's go straight in and find it. And again, we'll grab a vehicle, but also see how quickly in the world we can get to the highest point, and does that make any difference whatsoever. But for now, again, no real drop there. Let's get ourselves straight into a vehicle there and get moving. So again, we want to travel around as fast as we can, see if there's any drops in frame rate, any drops in graphics or fidelity there. Again, weird how difficult the vehicles can be controlled in this with a camera that doesn't automatically trace behind you there. But still, nonetheless, I'm sorry little fella, but you're gone. Let's carry on all the way through the world there. But again, we're seeing no difference there. We're getting slightly towards the edge, so we have to make a jump. But yeah, I'm seeing no difference there in terms of textural drops in frame rate there. Again, I feel like an absolute stone cold murderer there. Again, these are the AI characters there. But for now, we can move forward. And again, I'm seeing no drops there whatsoever. It's running absolutely fine for me, exactly how I'd like to see it. So what we're going to do is start making our way out of the vehicle. And I think what we want to do is start making our way to a high point on the map. So let's go for it there. So again, we just want to travel nice and high to just double check that the textures are running the way we want to see them. And yeah, I think that's running absolutely fine there. Again, just swapping between, not going to worry too much about enemies there. Going to get nice and close up to some of these textures to see how well they're running there. Moving along. Going in and out. Yep, absolutely fine. Everything's the way I'd like to see it. Yeah, I'd say that's running fine for me there. Absolutely happy with what I'm seeing there. And I know a lot of you who play Call of Duty are watching me doing this going, why haven't you fired a single chuffing bullet? And why won't you turn around and shoot the man that's shooting at you? Again, I'm just looking at graphical fidelity here. We're not going to worry too much about all the other stuff there. But for now, I'm going to call that a success. Quite pleased with the way that's played there. No difficulties whatsoever as we navigate through the world there all the way along. And I think for now, what I can do is head back to the PSN and summarize everything we've seen today. So let's come out, have a little exit there. Again, the Firecuda 530, I've not been particularly cagey about this. It's been one of my favourite SSDs that I've tested on the PS5 system in the early days with the 500 gig. And I didn't have any low expectations for this 1TB model here. Again, I'm going to be doing a test of those other games that I've installed over on another video coming very, very soon, because this video is already weighing in a little bit long with these 4 games and these 7 tests that we've done so far, 8 if you include the transfers. But for now, still the score to beat, and do, if you get a moment, do watch my re-review video that I published recently, where I talked about the heatsink version of this SSD that we're utilising today, because this heatsink version is just great for the heat dissipation. Right now, although this SSD, again, is more expensive than most out there, you're still getting one of the fastest SSDs on the market, one of the most enduring SSDs on the market, 3 years data recovery, and arguably one of the best heat dissipating heatsinks I've tested this year. So again, very hard to quibble, at least from my point of view. Maybe you've got one and you disagree, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed the video. It genuinely helps the channel, and it also helps me understand what I'm doing right. Click subscribe to learn more, and so you can follow up for the second test on this 1TB drive and the big face-off with WD Black, Samsung 980 Pro and more. And of course, if you do enjoy this video and you want to learn about the right SSD upgrades for your PS5, if the Firecuda is too expensive for you, there's a full guide listed in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.